Wow, I mean, this is getting the realm of predictions, which is always complicated, especially if it's recorded. uh, well, I think that goes back to my previous answer. Capitalism is one way to organize production, and if we look back into, or if you're trying to learn, different modes of production, the history of these modes of production, the transition between feudalism to capitalism, and other transitions to different modes of production, we understand that there is an aspect of human agency acting, changing that kind of the way we organize society. Capitalism is not, it's not like Fukuyama said in the end of the 80s, 1980s, and it's the end of history. Here we go, that's the best way to organize society, and we are fine. I think it's quite the opposite. I think we have capitalism as in the same way that other modes of production has shortcomings, weaknesses. The problem is we're not assuming them, we're not considering them, we're not looking to these limitations, which in terms of endurance, it goes back to the sustainability of the Earth, the planet itself, but also the question of the inequality among countries, but also among people in one country, right? So we have some let's call contradiction within capitalism, within global capitalism right now, that our current framework is still dealing as something deviating from the norm, from what should be, and not actually dealing with these contradictions as perhaps they are the norms of capitalism. So if we deal, or if you're trying to understand, or at least raise the question, are these contradictions the norm of capitalism? And then we're going to face a serious discussion. We can perhaps move to understand that capitalism is one way to organize society, and perhaps you can start thinking about different ways. We can look back in the past. We know how problematic socialism in the last century was, but that doesn't exclude that we can't go back and review modes of organization that doesn't rely mainly and solely on the market forces. I think there is again, to go back to the kind of economics that has been excluded from the mainstream, feminist economics, for example, is really highlighting a kind of a care economy where you don't really rely on profit motives. There are social scientists theorizing about something called the foundational economy, which is related to, a kind of there's not even the minimal living conditions to anyone. It's likely proper living conditions to people. So, but I think when these questions, someone can look into that in terms of tweaks you're going to do to capitalism, but you can also look into that in a way that this system can't survive in a way it is. Or perhaps it can't survive, you just have to come up with something differently. And of course, here, you could ask me perhaps the following question would be, well, everybody wants the best. Everybody wants everybody to be happy and have everything, to have shiny stuff, or to kind of be able to eat and have shelter and so on. So what's stopping us from either a better system or addressing the weaknesses and shortcomings we have in capitalism itself? And it's difficult to point our finger on someone. Economists with this framework is definitely someone that to go back to accountability that should be brought into the discussion. But I think there's also something that economics also is not dealing directly, which is the politics of knowledge, but also politics itself in society. Because in our framework, we are really looking into individuals' behavior. The question of classes, social classes, conflict between classes are not really something that economists are really concerned with. It's not part of their framework. So this causes limitations in terms to understand if there is a social class that is gaining from capitalism, therefore want things to keep as it is, because we're not really dealing with that. And social scientists and sociologists that are dealing with that can easily be dismissed as just, a bunch of left ideological scholars. So it's complicated, but I think, to summarize, capitalism is not the only system. We can definitely change it. I think the pandemic has really exacerbated some of the contradictions that are inherent to capitalism. And it would be nice to start addressing these contradictions and then have a serious discussion with all the cards on the table about what we're going to do next. We're going to destroy the planet. We're going to live with inequality, with people not having anything to eat, with kids, with children dying of malnutrition. Is that how we want to carry on? I don't think that's the way to carry on, really. Yeah.